The smell of burnt turkey and Janet's cheap perfume hit me like a slap in the face when I walked into the Grafton family house that Thanksgiving morning. Same old routine, Jade's mother pretending she could cook, her father hiding behind his newspaper, and me playing the dutiful son-in-law who'd rather be anywhere else on earth. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Miles Grafton, 40 years old, logistics coordinator at Midwest Distribution, and apparently the family cash cow. Been married to Jade for 8 years, and every single holiday feels like I'm paying admission to watch a bad soap opera where everyone hates me but loves my paycheck. Miles, honey, could you grab me a beer from the kitchen? Jade called out, not even looking up from her phone. She was sprawled on the couch in her designer jeans, the ones I paid for, texting someone with that secretive little smile she'd been wearing a lot lately. Sure thing, sweetheart, I said, loading up the sarcasm thick enough to spread on toast. But she wasn't listening anyway. The kitchen was a disaster zone. Janet had apparently decided to cook everything at once, creating what looked like a crime scene involving gravy and cranberry sauce. I stepped over a fallen pot holder and opened the fridge, reaching for a Budweiser when I heard voices from the pantry. Telling you, Mom, this is the perfect time. Jade's voice, low and urgent. But Miles has been so good to us, honey. He paid for Dad's surgery and the house payment. Conrad can provide so much more than Miles ever could. He's got the clinic, the car dealership, that new condo downtown. I'm pregnant, Mom. This baby deserves better than a warehouse worker who thinks Olive Garden is fine dining. My hand froze on the beer bottle. Pregnant? We'd been trying for 3 years, and suddenly she's pregnant by someone named Conrad? Are you sure about the timing? Janet's voice was worried but calculating. Miles might fight the divorce if he finds out about the baby. He won't find out until it's too late. Conrad's lawyer says if I file first and claim emotional distress, I can get the house, half his retirement, and child support. Miles will get over it. He always does. He's too nice for his own good. I stood there like an idiot, holding a beer I no longer wanted, listening to my wife plan my financial destruction with the same tone she used to order coffee. 8 years of marriage, and I was just another item on her shopping list to be returned for store credit. What about Conrad's wife? Janet asked. She doesn't know anything. Conrad says she's too busy with her book club and yoga classes to pay attention. We've been careful. The baby isn't due until summer, so by then the divorce will be final and I'll be living in his condo. And Miles will just accept this? Jade laughed, and it was the ugliest sound I'd ever heard. Miles accepts everything, Mom. That's his problem. He accepted your borrowing money from our account. He accepted Dad's gambling debts. He accepted Ted getting that job at his company, even though he's completely useless. Miles is a doormat with a paycheck. That's when something inside me snapped. Not the dramatic, movie-style snap where I'd burst through the door screaming. This was colder, quieter. Like a switch being flipped from nice guy to game over. I carefully set the beer back in the fridge and pulled out my phone. Jade had left her purse on the counter and her phone was sticking out of the side pocket, buzzing with notifications. While Janet and Jade continued their planning session, I quickly scrolled through Jade's messages. Conrad Miller. The name appeared in dozens of texts going back months. My hands were steady as I took photos of the most damning messages. Can't wait to get rid of the extra weight. You promised me the condo after Christmas. Told him I was working late again. So easy to lie to someone who trusts you completely. Your baby deserves a father who can provide real security, not some warehouse nobody. I put her phone back exactly where I found it and grabbed my beer. Time to rejoin the family gathering. There you are! Janet beamed at me like I was her favorite person in the world. We were just talking about how blessed we are to have you in the family. Blessed, I repeated, taking a long pull of beer. That's exactly the word I was thinking. Jade looked up from her phone with that fake smile she'd perfected. "Everything okay, honey? You look a little pale." "Just thinking about the future," I said. Amazing how much can change in a single conversation. The rest of dinner was pure theater. I sat there eating Janet's dry turkey and listening to the usual family gossip, watching Jade play the loving wife while texting her boyfriend under the table. Every smile felt like a knife in my back, every honey like poison in my ears. But I kept my mouth shut and my expression neutral. Let them think I was the same old Miles, the pushover who'd take whatever they dished out. They had no idea they'd just declared war on someone who'd spent 20 years managing logistics, and logistics is just another word for strategic planning. After dinner, while everyone was watching football and digesting their lies along with their meal, I stepped outside to Conrad's car. Shiny black BMW parked in our driveway like he owned the place. Maybe he thought he did. I loosened 3 of the lug nuts on his front tire, not enough to cause an accident, just enough to give him a very inconvenient flat in a few miles. Then I took out the note I'd written on my phone and printed it on Janet's printer. Conrad. Enjoyed the turkey, but the conversation was even more filling. Jade's pregnancy announcement was particularly touching. Give my regards to your wife when you tell her the good news. P.S. Check your front tire. Miles. I tucked it under his windshield wiper and went back inside to say my goodbyes. Leaving so early? Jade asked, not looking up from her phone. Got some planning to do, I said, kissing the top of her head. Big changes coming. What kind of changes? Janet asked, suddenly alert. I smiled, and for the first time all day it was genuine. The kind that'll make this Thanksgiving unforgettable. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my truck in the parking lot of a Denny's when my phone exploded with calls and texts. First Conrad, then Jade, then Janet, all panicked and angry. I let them all go to voicemail and ordered a cup of coffee and a slice of pie. The voicemails were better than dessert. Conrad. You snake, you could have ruined me. That tire blew out on Highway 50. My car's in a ditch and I'm calling the police. Jade. Miles, what the hell is wrong with you? Conrad says you sabotaged his car. This is crazy behavior, even for you. Janet. Miles, honey, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Can we talk about this like adults? I finished my pie, left a generous tip, and drove home to start packing. Tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day. I woke up Friday morning in my own bed for what I knew would be the last time. Jade was already gone, probably running to Conrad to comfort him after his traumatic tire incident. The house felt different now, like I was seeing it through new eyes. 8 years of mortgage payments, improvements, and memories, all built on lies. The first call came at 7 a.m. My lawyer, Patricia Chen, no relation to any Chens I wasn't supposed to mention, just a sharp-tongued woman who'd helped me set up the prenup Jade had signed without reading. Miles, I got your message. Are you sure about this? Divorce is messy, and if she's really pregnant, she's pregnant all right, just not with my kid. I filled Patricia in on yesterday's kitchen revelation while I made coffee. What are my options? Well, the prenup is solid. House was yours before marriage, stays yours. But if she claims the baby is yours and files first, she won't get the chance. How fast can you file? I can have papers ready by noon. But Miles, you need to think about this. Once you pull this trigger, there's no going back. Patricia, they're planning to take everything I've worked for and leave me holding the bag for another man's kid. The trigger's already been pulled. By 10 a.m., I was loading boxes into my truck. I'd found a furnished apartment above Murphy's Bar on the south side. Not exactly luxury living, but it was mine. And more importantly, it came with a landlord who minded his own business. The apartment was a dump, but it had character. Hardwood floors that creaked in all the right places, windows that actually opened, and a view of the industrial district where I'd spent the last 15 years working my way up from warehouse floor to management. It felt honest, in a way the suburban house never had. I was arranging my books on a shelf when my phone rang. Ted, my older brother, the family disappointment, who'd somehow become Jade's confidant over the years. "Miles, what the hell are you doing?" Jade called me crying, saying you've lost your mind. "Just making some overdue changes, Ted. Nothing that concerns you." "It concerns me when my little brother is destroying his marriage over some paranoid fantasy. Jade loves you, man. She's pregnant with your kid, and you're acting like she's the enemy." I sat down on my new couch, a second-hand monster that had probably seen more honest conversations than my marriage bed ever had. "Ted, let me ask you something. How much did Conrad pay you to keep quiet about the affair?" Silence. Long, guilty silence. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't. Just like you didn't know about Mom Janet borrowing money from our joint account, or Dad's gambling problem, or the fact that Jade's been planning this divorce for months. You've been feeding her information about my finances, haven't you?" "Miles, you're being paranoid." "The job I got you at Midwest Distribution, the one where you have access to employee records, including salary information and retirement account balances. Funny how Jade suddenly became so interested in my 401k statements right after you started working there." I could hear Ted breathing hard on the other end. "Look, maybe I mentioned a few things, but it wasn't malicious. She's your wife. She has a right to know. She has a right to ask me directly. What she doesn't have a right to do is plan my financial destruction with my own brother's help. You're making a huge mistake, Miles. Think about the baby." "The baby that isn't mine?" "Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking Conrad Miller can support his own kid." I hung up and immediately called Patricia. "Add Ted to the list of people who don't get forwarding addresses. And start documenting everything. I have a feeling this is about to get very ugly." The divorce papers were served at 2 p.m. I wasn't there to see it, but I heard about it from 3 different sources within an hour. Jade had been at the dental clinic where Conrad worked, probably getting her story straight, when the process server showed up. My phone started ringing immediately. First Jade, then Janet, then a number I didn't recognize that turned out to be Conrad himself. I let them all go to voicemail and went for a walk around my new neighborhood. It was a working-class area, full of people who understood that life was hard and you dealt with it without whining. The kind of place where actions had consequences and bullshit was called bullshit. When I got back, I had 17 missed calls and 12 voicemails. I poured myself a whiskey, something I'd started doing more often lately, and listened to the greatest hits. Jade. "Miles, this is insane. I'm pregnant with your baby and you're divorcing me. What kind of man abandons his pregnant wife?" Janet. "Miles, honey, I know you're upset, but this is no way to handle things. Think about the family. Think about everything we've been through together." Conrad. "Grafton, I don't know what game you think you're playing, but you're messing with the wrong people. I've got lawyers too, and I won't let you destroy an innocent woman's life because you're having some kind of midlife crisis." The last voicemail was from Ted. "Miles, I'm coming over. We need to talk face to face." I looked around my small apartment and smiled. "No, we don't." Instead, I drove to the office supply store and bought a printer, some cardstock, and a laminating machine. If they wanted to play games, I was going to give them a game they'd never forget. That evening, I created what I privately called my evidence portfolio. Screenshots of Jade's texts, printed and organized chronologically. Bank statements showing Janet's unauthorized withdrawals from our joint account. Employment records showing Ted's access to confidential information. A timeline of Conrad's visits to our house when I was at work, cross-referenced with Jade's working late claims. I made copies of everything and stored them in 3 different locations. One set went to Patricia, one went into a safe deposit box I opened that afternoon, and one stayed with me. By the time I was finished, it was nearly midnight. I sat in my creaky chair, looking out at the city lights, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years: control. For 8 years, I'd been reacting to other people's plans. Jade's social ambitions, Janet's financial emergencies, Ted's career failures, Conrad's predatory moves on my wife. I'd been playing defense while they ran plays designed to strip me of everything I'd worked for. Not anymore. My phone buzzed with a text from Jade. "We need to talk. I'm coming over." I texted back, "No, you're not. Talk to my lawyer." "Miles, please. I can explain everything." Nothing to explain. I heard everything I needed to hear yesterday. Enjoy your new life with Conrad. "What are you talking about? There is no Conrad." I laughed out loud. Even caught red-handed, she was still lying. "Jade, I have screenshots of your texts. I have dates, times, and details. I know about the pregnancy, the condo, the financial planning, all of it. The only thing I don't know is how you thought you'd get away with it." My phone went silent for 10 minutes. Then, "You went through my phone? You left it on the counter while you planned my destruction in the kitchen." "I just documented what was already there." Another long pause. Then, "Miles, I made some mistakes, but we can work through this. Think about our history together." I looked around my honest little apartment and typed my final message of the night. "I'm thinking about our history. That's exactly why I'm done." I turned off my phone and went to bed. Tomorrow, the real fun would begin. Saturday morning brought rain and a phone call from Patricia at 8 a.m. sharp. "Miles, they're fighting the divorce. Conrad Miller hired Harrison, Webb and Associates, expensive firm. They're claiming emotional distress, mental instability, and they want a psychological evaluation before any assets are divided." I was making coffee in my tiny kitchen, watching the rain streak down the windows. Let them claim whatever they want. I've got documentation. They're also claiming the baby is yours and demanding paternity support during the proceedings. Jade filed a countersuit yesterday afternoon. How fast can we get a paternity test? Not until the baby's born, unless she agrees to an amniocentesis, which she won't, because it carries risks she'll claim you're forcing her to take. I sipped my coffee and thought about it. They were trying to tie me up in legal knots while draining my bank account with attorney fees. Classic strategy, and it might have worked on the old Miles. "Patricia, what if we go public?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if Jade's affair became common knowledge? What if Conrad's wife found out? What if their co-workers knew the whole story?" "Miles, I can't advise you to—" "I'm not asking you to advise me. I'm asking you what would happen if the truth came out through other channels." Long pause. "It would probably make them more willing to settle quickly and quietly." Interesting. Completely unrelated question. Is there any law against posting screenshots of text messages that were sent to my own phone? As long as you're not violating any restraining orders or making threats. Got it. Thanks, Patricia. I spent the morning researching Conrad Miller online. Turned out he was quite the pillar of the community. Married to Rebecca Miller for 15 years, 2 kids in high school. Member of the Rotary Club, deacon at First Methodist, volunteer coach for Little League. His dental practice's website featured family photos and testimonials about his integrity and family values. His car dealership was even more interesting. Miller's Used Cars specialized in financing for people with bad credit, the kind of business that made money off desperate people and operated in legal gray areas. The Better Business Bureau had 17 complaints in the last 2 years. By noon, I was dressed in my best suit and driving toward downtown. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray and threatening. Perfect weather for what I had planned. Jade used to work, as a receptionist at Comfort Family Dental, Conrad's clinic. It was one of those modern, sterile places with too much glass and not enough soul. I'd been there exactly twice in 8 years of marriage, both times to drop off forgotten lunches. I parked across the street and watched through the windows. Jade was at her desk, talking on the phone with animated hand gestures. Conrad was visible in the back office, white coat and perfect teeth, probably planning his next move in what he thought was a chess game. I walked in at 12:30, right during the lunch rush when the waiting room was full of patients. Jade looked up from her computer and went pale. Miles, what are you doing here? Delivering some paperwork, I said loudly enough for the waiting room to hear. I pulled out a manila envelope and set it on her desk with a solid thump. Divorce papers, custody documentation, and some interesting reading material. You can't do this here, she hissed, looking around at the patients who were now paying very close attention. Actually, I can do this anywhere I want. This is a public business, and you're my soon-to-be ex-wife. We have legal matters to discuss. Conrad appeared from the back office, still wearing his white coat like armor. Mr. Grafton, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is inappropriate. I turned to face him, and for the first time in this whole mess, I felt genuinely happy. Dr. Miller, perfect timing. I was hoping to meet the father of my wife's baby. The waiting room went silent. Jade made a strangled noise, and Conrad's perfect composure cracked just enough to show the panic underneath. I don't know what you're talking about, Conrad said, but his voice was an octave higher than it should have been. Really? Because I have some text messages that suggest otherwise. I pulled out my phone and started reading in a clear, carrying voice. Conrad, I can't wait to get rid of the extra weight. You promised me the condo after Christmas. Miles, stop, Jade whispered, but I was just getting started. Oh, here's a good one. Told him I was working late again. So easy to lie to someone who trusts you completely. An elderly woman in the waiting room gasped. A mother with 2 young children gathered them closer. The receptionist at the front desk, not Jade, the other one, had her mouth hanging open. Conrad stepped forward, trying to look authoritative. Sir, you need to leave immediately, or I'll call security. Call them, I said. I'm sure they'd love to hear the rest of these messages, especially the ones about your wife Rebecca and how she's too busy with book club to notice you're cheating. That hit home. Conrad actually staggered backward like I'd slapped him. You're insane, he managed. No, I'm thorough. I turned back to Jade, who was crying now, real tears, not the crocodile variety she usually deployed. 8 years, Jade. 8 years I supported you, supported your family, paid for your mother's bills and your father's gambling debts. And this is how you repay me? Miles, please, not here. Where then? In your kitchen while you plan my financial destruction? In Conrad's condo while you laugh about what a pushover I am? I turned to address the waiting room, which had become an unintentional audience to the destruction of my marriage. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption, but I thought you should know that Dr. Conrad Miller, family dentist and pillar of the community, has been having an affair with my wife. She's pregnant with his child, and they've been planning to divorce me and take half my assets to support their love nest. The silence was deafening. Then someone in the back started whispering, and within seconds the whole room was buzzing with shocked conversation. Conrad's face was red enough to stop traffic. That's slander. I'll sue you for every penny you have. Good luck with that. Everything I just said is documented and true, but please, sue me. I'd love to have this conversation in open court with your wife present. I picked up the manila envelope and handed it to Jade. Inside you'll find copies of all your text messages, bank records showing your mother's unauthorized withdrawals from our accounts, and employment records showing how Ted helped you gather information about my finances. Also a copy of the prenup you signed, highlighted for your convenience. Jade was sobbing openly now, mascara running down her cheeks in black streams. Miles, I'm sorry. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. No, we can't. Some mistakes don't get fixed, Jade. They just get consequences. I turned to leave, then stopped and addressed Conrad one more time. Oh, and doctor? You might want to check with your business partner at the used car lot. I sent copies of everything to the state dental board this morning. Something about moral turpitude clauses in professional licenses. The waiting room erupted in whispers and gasps. I walked out into the gray afternoon, feeling lighter than I had in years. My phone started ringing before I reached my truck. I let it ring. By Sunday morning, the story had spread through our small city like wildfire. I woke up to 43 missed calls, 67 text messages, and a friend request on Facebook from someone named Truth-Teller 2024, who had apparently created an account just to share screenshots of Jade's messages. I made coffee and scrolled through the digital carnage while rain drummed against my apartment windows. Someone, definitely not me, had created a detailed timeline of Jade and Conrad's affair and posted it in 3 different local Facebook groups. The comments were brutal and entertaining in equal measure. Patricia called at 8 a.m. Miles, what did you do yesterday? Had a conversation with my wife and her boyfriend. Very public conversation. The story's everywhere. Local news picked it up. Channel 7 wants an interview. I nearly choked on my coffee. News? Prominent local dentist having affair with employee, divorce scandal, the whole thing. It's a slow news week, and this has everything. Betrayal, money, pregnancy drama. They're calling it the Thanksgiving divorce. Jesus. It gets worse. Conrad Miller's wife filed for divorce yesterday afternoon. Apparently she'd been suspicious for months, and your little performance gave her the evidence she needed. She's asking for the house, the practice, and full custody of their kids. I should have felt guilty. I really should have. Instead, I felt like I'd finally started playing chess instead of checkers. What about Jade? She's staying with her parents. Janet called my office 6 times yesterday, begging for a meeting. She says the family is willing to make concessions. What kind of concessions? Full financial disclosure, return of all borrowed money, and they'll accept a quick, quiet divorce with minimal alimony. I looked around my small apartment and thought about the house I'd been paying for, the family I'd been supporting, the lies I'd been believing. Not interested. Miles, this might be the best offer you get. Patricia, they had 8 years to treat me with respect. They chose to treat me like an ATM with legs. Now they want to negotiate because their world is falling apart? Too late. After I hung up, I drove to the grocery store for supplies. Bad idea. I made it exactly 3 aisles before running into Lisa Hendricks, one of Jade's closest friends and the biggest gossip in a city full of gossips. Miles! She rushed over with her cart, eyes bright with the kind of excitement people get when they're close to drama, but not quite in the blast radius. I heard about what happened. I'm so sorry. Are you? Of course. I mean, I had no idea Jade was, well, you know. We're all shocked. I studied her face. Lisa had the kind of expression people wear when they're lying badly. Too much eye contact, too much concern, too many hand gestures. Lisa, how long have you known? Known what? About Jade and Conrad. About the pregnancy. About the plan to divorce me and take half my assets. Her face went through several interesting color changes. I don't know what you mean. Really? Because I have text messages between Jade and her mother where they mention you knew about the affair. Something about you being at Conrad's condo for a dinner party last month. That was a complete bluff, but it worked. Lisa's carefully constructed concern crumbled like wet cardboard. Look, it wasn't my place to say anything. Jade swore me to secrecy, and she said you two were having problems anyway. What problems? The problem where I paid all the bills. The problem where I supported her entire family. The problem where I trusted my wife not to screw around behind my back. Miles, please keep your voice down. No. I was getting tired of people telling me to keep my voice down, to be reasonable, to think about others' feelings. You knew my wife was cheating on me, planning to divorce me, and carrying another man's child. You knew, and you said nothing. That makes you complicit. I was trying to protect everyone. You were protecting yourself. You didn't want to lose your front row seat to the drama. Lisa's face hardened. You know what, Miles? Maybe if you'd been a better husband, Jade wouldn't have looked elsewhere. Maybe if you'd paid more attention to her needs instead of just throwing money around. What needs? The need for designer clothes I couldn't afford? The need for expensive dinners while her parents borrowed money from our account? The need to screw her boss while planning my financial destruction? By now, we had an audience. Other shoppers were pretending to study cereal boxes while listening to every word. Lisa noticed and tried to retreat. This isn't the place for this conversation. Actually, it's the perfect place, because now everyone knows that Lisa Hendricks knew about Jade's affair and kept quiet. They know you helped cover up the lies that nearly cost me everything I worked for. I left her standing there with her mouth open and finished my shopping. The checkout clerk, a young woman with purple hair and tired eyes, rang up my items without comment until the very end. "For what it's worth," she said quietly. "My mom went through something similar. Sometimes the friends who stay quiet are worse than the cheating spouse." "Thanks, that actually helps." Back at my apartment, I found Ted waiting by the entrance looking like he'd slept in his car, which, knowing Ted's financial situation, he probably had. "Miles, we need to talk." "No, we don't. I'm your brother. You were my brother. Now you're just another person who sold me out for pocket change." Ted followed me up the stairs, talking fast. "It wasn't like that. Jade said you were having problems, that you might be hiding assets, that she just needed to know where things stood financially." I unlocked my door and turned to face him. "How much did Conrad pay you?" "It wasn't about money." "How much, Ted?" His shoulders sagged. 5,000. But it wasn't about the money. It was about helping Jade understand. Understand what? How much money she could steal in the divorce? She said you were emotionally abusive, that you controlled all the finances. I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. "Ted, I gave Jade access to every account we had. She had credit cards, a checking account, even access to my retirement fund. The only thing I controlled was making sure the bills got paid. But she said..." She lied. Just like she lied about the pregnancy being mine, just like she lied about working late, just like she lied about everything else for the past 8 months. Ted slumped against the hallway wall. "Jesus, Miles, I didn't know. I thought I was helping." "You thought you were making easy money. There's a difference. What can I do to make this right?" I looked at my older brother, the guy who'd taught me to throw a baseball and drive a stick shift, who'd also just sold out my marriage for $5,000. "Nothing. There's nothing you can do. The damage is done." I went inside and closed the door. Through the thin walls, I could hear Ted crying in the hallway. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Rebecca Miller. I'd like to talk to you about our mutual situation. Coffee tomorrow?" I stared at the message for a long time. Conrad's wife wanted to meet. This was either going to be very good or very bad for everyone involved. I texted back, "Murphy's Diner, 10 a.m. The war was about to get a new ally. Rebecca Miller was nothing like what I'd expected. Conrad's wife turned out to be a small, fierce woman with graying hair and eyes like laser beams. She was already seated in a corner booth at Murphy's Diner when I arrived Monday morning, nursing a cup of coffee and reading what looked like legal documents. "Mr. Grafton?" She stood and offered her hand. Her grip was firm, businesslike. "Thank you for meeting me. Call me Miles, and thank you for reaching out." We sat across from each other like negotiators at a peace treaty, which, in a way, we were. "I want you to know," Rebecca said without preamble, "that I suspected something was wrong for months. Conrad was working late constantly, taking mysterious phone calls, buying new clothes, classic cheating husband behavior. Why didn't you confront him? Because I needed proof. In a divorce, suspicion isn't enough. You need documentation." She smiled grimly. "Your little performance at the clinic gave me everything I needed." I sipped my coffee and studied her face. Rebecca Miller had the look of someone who'd been planning for war long before the first shot was fired. "What do you want from me?" "Information. You said you have text messages, financial records, timeline documentation. I want copies." "Why should I give them to you?" "Because Conrad and your wife are planning to destroy both of us, and together, we can destroy them first." She slid a folder across the table. Conrad's been skimming money from the dental practice to fund his car dealership. He's also been inflating insurance claims and providing unnecessary treatments to boost revenue. I've been documenting everything for 6 months. I opened the folder and whistled. Rebecca had bank statements, insurance records, patient files, even photos of Conrad's hidden safe in their basement. This is fraud. Multiple kinds of fraud. Exactly. And if this information found its way to the State Insurance Commission and the IRS, Conrad would be looking at serious jail time. What do you want in return? I want him to agree to a divorce that leaves me with the house, half the legitimate assets, and full custody of our children. I want him to disappear from our lives completely. I thought about it while watching the morning traffic through the diner window. Rebecca Miller was offering me nuclear weapons in exchange for conventional ammunition. There's something else, she said. Jade's pregnancy. What about it? I don't think she's actually pregnant. I nearly choked on my coffee. What? Think about it. When did she tell Conrad? When did she tell her mother? Right around the time you started asking questions about working late, right around the time Conrad's wife started getting suspicious. Very convenient timing. But the pregnancy test can be faked, easily. There are dozens of ways to fake a positive test, and even more ways to fake early pregnancy symptoms. My mind was racing. Why would she fake being pregnant? Because pregnant women get sympathy, pregnant women get alimony, pregnant women get child support, and if she's supposedly carrying your child, she gets to claim you abandoned your family. Rebecca pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. This was taken yesterday at the grocery store. Does she look pregnant to you? The photo showed Jade in profile, wearing a tight sweater. Her stomach was completely flat. She's supposed to be 4 months along, Rebecca said. At 4 months, there should be some visible changes, especially on someone as small as Jade. I stared at the photo, feeling something between rage and relief. How do we prove it? We force her to prove she's pregnant. Medical records, doctor's visits, ultrasounds, real documentation, not just her word. Patricia, my lawyer, said we can't force a paternity test until birth. We don't need paternity. We just need proof of pregnancy. And if she can't provide it, I was beginning to understand why Conrad had underestimated his wife. Rebecca Miller was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. What's your timeline? Fast. Conrad's already moving money around, trying to hide assets. The longer we wait, the less there'll be to fight over. We spent the next hour planning strategy. Rebecca would file her divorce papers and include the fraud documentation as evidence of Conrad's character. I would demand immediate medical proof of Jade's pregnancy as part of the custody discussion. If she couldn't provide it, her entire case would collapse. There's one more thing, Rebecca said as we prepared to leave. Your brother Ted. What about him? He's been feeding information to Conrad, not just Jade. Conrad's been using Ted to track your financial moves, your lawyer meetings, even your new address. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. How do you know? Because Conrad's an idiot who keeps records of everything, including payments to informants. She slid another paper across the table. Ted's received 8 payments in the last 3 months, totaling $15,000. I stared at the bank records showing electronic transfers from Conrad's personal account to Ted's checking account. My own brother had been selling me out for months, not just helping Jade, but actively working for the enemy. I'm sorry, Miles. I know he's family. No, I said, folding the paper and putting it in my pocket. Family doesn't do this to family. We shook hands in the parking lot, 2 people who'd been betrayed by the people they trusted most, now united in a common cause. Miles, Rebecca said as she got into her car, they thought we'd be easy targets. They thought we'd just roll over and accept whatever they decided to do to us. Big mistake. The biggest. By the time we're done, they'll wish they'd never heard our names. I drove back to my apartment feeling like I'd just recruited the perfect ally. Rebecca Miller was smart, ruthless, and she had access to information that could destroy Conrad's life completely. My phone rang as I was climbing the stairs. Patricia, my lawyer. Miles, we have a problem. Jade's attorney filed an emergency motion claiming you're harassing her, threatening her, and endangering the baby. They want a restraining order. Based on what? Your appearance at the dental clinic, the public confrontation, and allegedly threatening text messages. I never sent any threatening messages. They have screenshots, messages from your phone number threatening to destroy her life and make her pay for what she's done. I sat down hard on my couch. Patricia, I never sent those messages. Can you prove it? I thought about Ted, about the $15,000, about how easy it would be for someone with access to phone records and technical knowledge to fake text messages. Yeah, I said. I think I can prove it, but I'm going to need your help, and we're going to have to move fast. What do you need? A forensic phone analysis, a private investigator, and a meeting with the prosecutor's office. The prosecutor? Miles, what aren't you telling me? I looked out my window at the gray November sky and smiled for the first time in days. Patricia, I think we just moved from divorce court to criminal court, and I think Conrad Miller and my dear brother Ted are about to find out what happens when you mess with the wrong logistics coordinator. What does that mean? It means I've been managing supply chains and complex operations for 20 years. I know how to track things, how to document things, and how to make sure everything ends up exactly where it's supposed to be. And where is everything supposed to end up? With the truth, and with consequences. The real war was just beginning. The next morning brought the restraining order, served by a deputy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I read through the legal documents while drinking coffee, marveling at the creativity of desperate people. According to Jade's sworn statement, I had threatened to destroy her reputation, ruin her relationship with Conrad, and make sure she never sees a penny of my money. The fake text messages were included as exhibits, complete with timestamps and my phone number. There was just one problem with their brilliant plan. I'd been documenting everything since Thanksgiving Day, including my phone records, location data, and every real message I'd sent. Thanks to my years in logistics, I had backup systems for my backup systems. Patricia arrived at my apartment at 9 a.m. with a briefcase full of legal ammunition and a private investigator named Frank Morrison who looked like he'd stepped out of a Raymond Chandler novel. Frank specializes in digital forensics, Patricia explained. He can prove those text messages were fabricated. Frank plugged a device into my phone and started running analysis software. This is actually pretty amateur work, he said after a few minutes. Whoever created these fake messages didn't bother to match your actual texting patterns. You use proper punctuation and complete sentences. These fake messages are full of abbreviations and slang you never use. How long to prove they're fake? I can have a preliminary report by this afternoon, but there's something else interesting here. Frank showed me his laptop screen. Your phone received several remote access attempts over the past month. Someone was trying to clone your device. Ted, I said. He works in IT at my company. He'd have the technical knowledge. And the motive, Patricia added. Rebecca Miller's evidence shows he was being paid to spy on you. I looked at both of them and made a decision that would have surprised the old Miles. I want to press charges, all of them, fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, whatever we can make stick. Miles, that's a nuclear option. Once you involve criminal charges, they already went nuclear when they tried to frame me for harassment, when they faked text messages and filed false police reports. I'm done playing defense. Frank packed up his equipment. I'll have the forensics report ready by 5 p.m., but I'd recommend moving fast. If they're smart, they'll realize their fake messages won't hold up to scrutiny and try to withdraw the complaint. After they left, I called Rebecca Miller. She answered on the first ring. Miles, I was about to call you. Conrad came home last night and cleaned out his safe. He's moving money and getting ready to run. How much money? At least 200,000 from what I can tell. Cash, gold coins, some bearer bonds he thought I didn't know about. Where's he going? I don't know, but he's been researching non-extradition countries. I think your little evidence collection spooked him more than he let on. I thought about Conrad Miller, pillar of the community, deacon at First Methodist, volunteer Little League coach, now preparing to flee the country like a common criminal. Rebecca, how would you feel about helping me set a trap? What kind of trap? The kind that gets us everything we want and puts all of them exactly where they belong. That afternoon, I drove to Ted's apartment complex, a rundown place on the edge of town where people minded their own business and asked no questions. I found him in the parking lot, loading boxes into his car. Going somewhere, brother? Ted jumped like he'd been shot. Miles! Jesus, you scared me! Leaving town seems a little suspicious, don't you think? Especially right after filing a false police report. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out Frank's preliminary forensics report. Ted, you're good with computers, but you're terrible at covering your tracks. We have evidence of you accessing my phone remotely, creating fake text messages, and filing false harassment charges. Ted's face went white. Miles, I can explain how you sold out your own brother for $15,000. Explain how you helped them plan to steal half my assets. Explain how you tried to frame me for harassment when their plan started falling apart. Conrad said it was just to protect Jade during the divorce. Conrad lied. Just like Jade lied. Just like you lied. I stepped closer. But here's the thing, Ted. I'm giving you one chance to make this right. What do you want? I want you to call Conrad and Jade. Tell them you have new information about my assets, something big that they need to hear in person. Set up a meeting. Miles, I can't. You can, and you will, because the alternative is me calling the district attorney and having you arrested for fraud, identity theft, and filing false police reports. You'll be looking at 5 to 10 years in state prison. Ted slumped against his car. What kind of meeting? Tomorrow night, somewhere private where we can all have a final conversation about how this is going to end. I gave him the address of the abandoned amusement park on the east side of the lake. It had been closed for 15 years, but the main pavilion was still standing, and more importantly, it was isolated enough for the kind of conversation we needed to have. Tell them 8 p.m. Tell them it's about hidden assets worth over $500,000. Tell them I've been planning to disappear with the money, but you found out and you're willing to help them stop me. And then what happens? I smiled, and for the first time in this whole mess, it felt genuinely warm. Then we have a family reunion they'll never forget. Wednesday evening was clear and cold, with a full moon that turned the abandoned amusement park into something from a Stephen King novel. I arrived early and set up in the old pavilion, a concrete structure with good acoustics and multiple exits. Rebecca Miller was already there, hidden in the shadows with a digital recorder and a camera with a telephoto lens. Frank Morrison was positioned outside with electronic surveillance equipment. Patricia was back in town with signed warrants and a direct line to the sheriff's department. At 8 p.m. sharp, 2 cars pulled into the gravel parking lot. Conrad's BMW and Jade's Honda, both looking out of place among the weeds and broken carnival rides. They approached the pavilion cautiously, Ted leading the way like a man walking to his own execution. Jade was dressed in dark clothes and a heavy coat that could have been hiding a pregnancy or just the November cold. Conrad looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past week. Miles? Jade called out. Ted said you wanted to talk. I stepped out of the shadows, and they all jumped. I did want to talk. All of us together. No lawyers, no lies, just the truth. What truth? Conrad demanded, trying to sound authoritative but failing. The truth about your affair, the truth about the fake pregnancy, the truth about the plan to steal my assets and destroy my life. The truth about bribing my brother to spy on me. Jade started to protest, but I held up my hand. I'm not done. The truth about Conrad's insurance fraud. The truth about the money he's been skimming from his dental practice. The truth about the fake text messages and false harassment charges. You can't prove any of that, Conrad said, but his voice was shaking. Actually, I can prove all of it. I pulled out a thick folder and started reading. Jade, you're not pregnant. You never were pregnant. You faked the pregnancy test and the symptoms to gain leverage in the divorce. That's ridiculous. Then you won't mind taking a pregnancy test right now. I brought one. I held up a drugstore pregnancy test kit. Pee on the stick, Jade. Right now, in front of everyone. Prove me wrong. She backed away like I was holding a snake. I don't have to prove anything to you. Conrad, you've been committing insurance fraud for 2 years, billing for procedures you never performed, and inflating claims for unnecessary treatments. You've also been moving money offshore in preparation for fleeing the country. Conrad's composure finally cracked completely. You snake, you've been spying on me. And Ted, my dear brother, you've been selling information about me for months, helping them plan my financial destruction, and when that wasn't enough, you helped them frame me for harassment by creating fake text messages. Ted was crying now, actually crying. Miles, I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. But it did go this far. You all decided I was an easy target, someone you could manipulate and rob and destroy without consequences. I looked at each of them in turn, these people who had been the most important relationships in my life, now revealed as nothing more than predators in human clothing. Here's what's going to happen, I said. Conrad, you're going to agree to Rebecca's divorce terms. You're going to give her the house, half of everything, and full custody of your children. You're also going to surrender your dental license and close the car dealership. Like hell I will. Or Rebecca and I turn over all our evidence to the State Insurance Commission, the IRS, and the FBI. You'll be looking at federal fraud charges and 10 to 15 years in prison. Conrad's face was red with rage, but he was trapped, and he knew it. Jade, you're going to sign an uncontested divorce agreement. No alimony, no asset division, no claims on my retirement or the house. You're also going to publicly admit that you lied about the pregnancy and the harassment charges. Then you'll be charged with filing false police reports, fraud, and conspiracy. Your choice. And Ted, I turned to my brother, who was still crying. You're going to confess to the district attorney about the fake text messages and the conspiracy to commit fraud. You're going to testify against Conrad and Jade if necessary. Miles, please. No, you made your choice when you sold me out for money. Now you live with the consequences. I looked around the abandoned amusement park, at the broken rides and faded paint, and realized it was the perfect metaphor for what remained of these relationships. You all thought you were so clever, I said. You thought you could destroy my life and walk away with everything I'd worked for. You thought I was weak, that I'd just accept whatever you decided to do to me. I smiled, and this time, it wasn't warm at all. You were wrong. Rebecca stepped out of the shadows, camera in hand. I got everything on video and audio, every confession, every admission, every threat. Frank Morrison appeared from behind a broken carnival game. Digital surveillance recorded everything too, crystal clear audio and video. Patricia's voice came through my phone speaker. I'd had her on conference call the entire time. Sheriff's department is en route. Warrants are signed and ready to serve. The look on their faces was worth 8 years of lies and betrayal. Conrad tried to run, but Frank tackled him before he made it 10 feet. Jade collapsed onto a bench, sobbing. Ted just stood there like a statue, finally understanding that his world had just ended. As the sheriff's cars pulled into the parking lot, I walked over to the old carousel and sat down on one of the painted horses. The moon was bright overhead, and for the first time in months, I felt completely at peace. Justice wasn't always swift, but when it finally arrived, it was absolutely perfect.